What is up, and welcome into JR Weekly. My name is Jeff Ratcliffe, and here for you on a Football Friday, Black Friday here, of course, to all the Sirius XM listeners, and IPA Friday as well. But also a happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there, especially the American. I know the Canadian viewers are wishing us a happy Thanksgiving as well, which I appreciate the Canadian viewers. But a great day of football, an interesting day of football. A day where we saw, some excitement. We saw some injuries. Does sound like DeAndre Swift's going to be good, so that's all right. But no word on Darren Waller just yet. We're supposed to get an MRI today on that knee. Anyway, on JR Weekly, like we do every single week, I'm going to break down the remaining games for you with the exception of Monday Night Football. I'll be back at 2 o'clock Eastern on Monday to give you 5-player props for Monday Night Football. But we do have a nice slate here remaining. A couple boring games, but the beauty to player prop betting is, you get action in on the boring games. So I'm going to give you a player prop that I like for each of those games. Some lines aren't out there for some of them due to injury situations. We'll also talk about all of the key fantasy information that you need to know here to set those starting lineups. And by the way, since it is Black Friday, we have something very nice going on over at the FTN Network. All three of our sites, FTNFantasy.com, FTNDaily.com, FTNBets.com. We have a Black Friday sale going on. Promo code is Black Friday. Very hard to forget that one. All one word there. And using that code, you are going to get 40% off. I know. It's a lot. It's a lot. We had to fight for this. The powers that be at FTN didn't want to go 40%, but you know what? I banged the table and I said, we got to get the people what they want. 40% off. So take advantage of that. It's the gift that keeps giving you around if you wanted to give it as a Christmas gift. If you want to get in on the mix, you want to look at rankings and projections and tools at FTNFantasy.com. You want to look at all the DFS slate breakdowns and cheat sheets galore at FTNDaily.com. If you want to look at Bet Tracker and our betting tools over at FTNBets.com, get in on it. Black Friday is the promo code. All right, let's dive into the games here. We'll go game by game. We're going to start with an AFC North showdown between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cincinnati Bengals. We have two very high-volume running backs in this one. Najee Harris, of course, and Joe Mixon. Both of these guys are among the league leaders in touches per game. In fact, there are only 7 backs who average more than 20 touches per game. Derrick Henry is one of those backs, obviously banged up right now, but only 7 on the season, and 2 of them are playing in this game. So we can expect a healthy dose of both of those guys, and actually the matchup is not bad for either one of them, so there's no concerns there. I think it's more interesting, though, to look at the passing game. On the Pittsburgh side, Chase Claypool playing through turf toe. I can only imagine. That's a nagging injury. You might think, big deal toe. No, it is a big deal when you're running. If you ever paid attention to what your toes do when you're running, it is a big deal. So that really is tough for him. You also are not going to have Eric Ebron in this contest, so Pat Freiermuth, plenty of opportunity for him to put up some points. Now, Deontay Johnson, of course, is coming off another heavy volume game. It's almost like you ink him in for double-digit targets. When he gets up against Eli Apple in this one, I especially like him, so we're in a good spot there with Deontay Johnson. Now, on the other side, and by the way, so I just got breaking news here on Darren Waller. It is a strained IT band in his knee. So a knee strain essentially here. I don't have the timetable on that particular injury. The IT band, if it goes up the side of your leg as well. I do know that from my track and field days, but I don't know what the timetable is on that, if this is a day-to-day type injury or if this is an injury that's going to sideline for a couple weeks. This is not the time of year we want to see these guys out, that's for sure. But that update did just come through. Anyway, back over Joe Burrow. I think it's very important to have reasonable expectations when we play fantasy football, which is very different from being a fan, right? If you've ever listened to my SiriusXM show, you hear me say in the intro to the show, divorce yourself from the fan mindset. What I mean by that is, hey, when we're fans, we're irrational. Everything sucks. We're angry about everything, and everything is overblown, or everything's amazing and this is the greatest team ever, right? Everything is overblown. But for fantasy purposes, if we do that, we're going to start making a lot of bad decisions. So we need to exist in the middle. We have to have reasonable expectations for players. And a few weeks ago, Joe Burrow looked like he was on the verge of being an every week quarterback one, but he also has shown some downside. So the realistic expectation for him is that he is basically a front end quarterback too. There are going to be weeks where we rank him as a top 12 guy like this week. But if he goes out there and it's not the best game, we don't then immediately completely cut bait on him. We just need to know who the player is. If you want to become a better fantasy player, ground yourself in a realistic set of expectations for these players, and you will become better at fantasy. Of course, he has Jamar Chase. He's awesome. I think our expectations are totally fine for him, but T. Higgins, maybe not. Yes, T. Higgins is prone to a down game, but he also has a very high ceiling. So that's something to keep in mind there with T. Higgins. Now, in terms of player props for this one, I'm going to go back to how I started this discussion for this game, the volume. And I'm looking in particular at Najee Harris. Right now, DraftKings has rushing attempts for him at 16.5. Now, it is juice to the over, but I'll take the juice. It's minus 130. It's nothing crazy. So I'll take minus 130 on the over there with Najee Harris. It's a favorable matchup for him against that Cleveland defense. And as we've seen this season, they are going to feed their young running back the rock. It's not going to change this week. So I like that over right there. I think probably if it was 17.5, be a little bit trickier, but I do like the 16.5 line right there for Najee Harris. Let's move on to Tampa and Indianapolis. Wow, what do we get for an encore after a historic day from Jonathan Taylor? And Jonathan Taylor showed us in that contest that while we did think Buffalo was a strong run defense, it doesn't matter for Jonathan Taylor. It doesn't matter. Does not matter. He's as close to matchup proof as there is among healthy running backs right now in the NFL. He has been utterly fantastic. Especially, got off to a slightly sluggish start for fantasy purposes in weeks 1 and 2. But since then, he's been off the charts and obviously really punctuating that with an exclamation point last week. What do we get this week? Now, Tampa last year, yes, they were the cream of the crop run defense in the NFL. This year, they are one of the better run defenses in the NFL. Would I call them the best? No, but they're up there, only allowing 3.54 yards per carry to opposing backfields. But we did just see Antonio Gibson score twice on them. So I'm not worried at all about Jonathan Taylor in this one. No worries whatsoever. And in fact, I think because their defense is fairly good against the run, this is going to help out Carson Wentz and Michael Pittman to get off the schneid as well. On the other side, we're in wait-and-see mode for Mike Evans. We already know Antonio Brown's not going to play. Mike Evans on the injury report, Bruce Arians said he did make some progress here, so he could be back on the field, but just have a plan in place in case he doesn't go. And I don't think that plan ultimately is Tyler Johnson, by the way. If no Evans, then a buttload, and that's a technical term around these parts, a buttload of Chris Godwin and Rob Gronkowski. Gronk was back. And honestly, last week I said on the show, I'll take the under on his receptions because I don't know how much. Well, I was wrong. Apparently, there's only one speed for Rob Gronkowski. There's only one way to play him, and it's all in. So Gronk is back in our good graces for sure for fantasy purposes. I have a tight end 6 right now. I do want to key in on the run game, though, because while I'm certainly still starting Leonard Fournette as an RB2 this week. Actually, I have him as 16 in my running back rankings, which you can get over at ftnfantasy.com. I am also going to acknowledge that this is a relatively tough matchup. Indy has fared well against the run, third fewest fantasy points per game to opposing backfields. And I look at Leonard Fournette's rushing yards line, and I do think there's a little bit of an opportunity here. It's 51.5. It's not astronomical, but this is the time of year where the unders that don't seem like they're going to be unders start hitting, right? You know, if we look at these lines earlier in the year, 51.5, probably not playing it or hammering it over. But right now, especially given what we've seen sort of recently here, given the matchup, given the fact that we will probably see a little bit of Ronald Jones, not enough for fantasy purposes, but just enough there to put the under in play. I'm going to take that under at minus 115, bet MGM. By the way, if you want to check out all of the markets that are available for these guys, we have something for you. This has been a labor of love for our chief operating officer, Elliot Christ. But for the longest time, we've had the prop shop. Now, the prop shop is sort of like the Google of sports betting. You could search Leonard Fournette's name out. You get all the lines available. But you're only getting Leonard Fournette on your screen. Well, we now have you covered with our player props tool, which you can check out over at ftnbets.com. Now you get to see all the markets for all the players across different categories. So if you wanted to just look at rushing yards, you got Fournette there. You got Jonathan Taylor there. You'll have Najee Harris and Joe Mixon from the game I just talked about. All of that will be up there along with all of the different lines that are available. And you can really, at a glance, see who's offering the best lines. And you can compare that then also to my projections, which are right there on the screen. So it's a great resource. Go check it out at ftnbets.com. Let's move on to Carolina and Miami. Have we traveled back in time? Is it 2015 all over again? Well, sure. I hope. I wish. As long as I don't have to experience 2020 ever again, can we skip right past that one? But regardless, Cam Newton, it's like he's back to an elite fantasy option, or at least he was last week. Now, over-exaggerating any single performance is not wise, as I just mentioned earlier in the show. So I'm not going to do that here. But I am going to continue to ride this wave until Cam proves us wrong. Right? Until Cam shows he can't be a quarterback one, I'm going to ride that wave. And this could be that guy. Every year there is that guy at the position. There is a guy who comes out of seemingly nowhere at the end of the season, like Jalen Hurts last year, and ends up being a very quality quarterback one option. Cam Newton can run the football. We know that. Cam Newton can throw the football a little bit. Nobody's going to ever confuse him with Dan Marino or anything like that. But he does have decent enough weapons here. He's got DJ Moore. He's got Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, and he has some guy named Christian McCaffrey, who's the best pass-catching back in the NFL to throw the ball to. It's a great situation for Cam Newton. To make that even better, this is a matchup where Miami is giving up a lot of fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So the number 4 fantasy matchup right now, I'm going to roll with Cam Newton for as long as I can. On the other side, Jalen Waddle, we know, has been excellent. You know you're using Mike Gesicki. It's a roller coaster ride at tight end. But I wanted to key in on Myles Gaskin. So the team did claim Phillip Lindsay off waivers. He was waived by the Texans. That, to me, will complicate things for Myles Gaskin when Lindsay is fully integrated. Now, I would expect him to probably be active for this one, dress for this one, and be active. I don't quite know if that's 100%, though, so don't take me on that one. But as soon as he is integrated into this offense, he's going to take some work away from Gaskin. Not enough to be fantasy relevant, but enough to impact Gaskin's fantasy value. If he takes, say, 5 touches away per game from Gaskin, and I would expect that to be in the run game, well, that's a pretty sizable decrease for Gaskin, who now moves from being a high-volume RB2 to being a risk-reward flex option going forward. So keep that in mind if you have Myles Gaskin. Let's go back to Super Cam, though, for our player prop. This one's almost too easy. I would expect this line to go up, so if you want to get it now. It's 34.5 rushing yards at FanDuel, minus 114. He had 46 last week. I honestly think the line should be 40.5. I'll be bluntly honest. That would be a line where I'd be like, ooh, I don't want to play either side of that. 34.5 is too low. He's going to run the football. He's going to run the football 10 times. He's going to run the football 10 times at a clip of at least 4 yards per carry. 34.5 too low. Just too low, especially against that Miami defense. So Cam Newton over. That's probably the easiest one on the board for me today. Let's go to Tennessee, New England. Right now, there are no lines for this one. There's a lot of moving pieces here, so let's dive into it. On the Tennessee side, the moving piece, A.J. Brown, will he play, won't he play? I don't have a practice report up in front of me right now, but if I see anything pop up here like I just did with Darren Waller, I'll go over to it. If that news does break. So he's up in the air. On the other side, Ramondre Stevenson popping up on the injury report on a Thursday, typically not good, but it could be one of two things. A good scenario would be, we're giving him a light workload today and we're calling it a knee, right? Because these guys are banged up with so many different things at this point in the season. You could call the injury whatever you want to call it. We'll call it a knee. It's a light workload. Or the knee injury happened in practice. I don't know one or the other, but the second one, obviously the latter, is much worse than the former. If it is the second one, I think we'll get an indication of that today, and it'll be a DNP on the practice report. Again, I don't have a practice report in front of me for this one, so keep your eye on that. DNP for A.J. Brown would be not very good. Does not look like he would play. DNP for Ramondre Stevenson would also be not very good. If Dre Day does not go, Ramondre Stevenson does not play, it would be a ton of Damian Harris. So we'd be looking at 18 to 22 carries, heavy workload. They're going to pound the ball on the ground, as we know. They're probably going to take control of this game early and do their thing. And that would be great for Damian Harris to be a top 12 play. If not, I actually do slightly prefer Harris. Initially, I'd slightly preferred Ramondre Stevenson, but we'd likely see both of those guys. On the other side, man, there is not much to use, is there? The backfield, at least we have some more clarity because Adrian Peterson is out of the mix now. So what I would expect, and by the way, it does not look like Jeremy McNichols will play. So I would expect a split between Deontay Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard. So just how we drew it up this season. And the early down work would go to Deontay Foreman, the passing down work to Dontrell Hilliard. If I had to play one, it is Foreman, and I do not like that. So he'd be a back end RB3, so essentially a flex option in that one. No lines for that game, like I said, so stay tuned there. Moving on to Philadelphia and the New York Giants. Getting news that, okay, Sterling Shepard, surprise, surprise, is not going to play. It also looks like Kadarius Toney won't be playing in this one. That's not guaranteed just yet, but I did see a report right before we went live on this broadcast that is looking likely there. So the answer is nothing. I mean, if that's what do I use there? Nothing. I can't trust Kenny Golladay. We have the offensive coordinator situation too. Can Freddie Kitchens be better than Jason Garrett? Like, I want to say yes. I really do. But you know as well as I do that I can't say yes definitively. So we'll see. The only thing I'm really using there is Saquon Barkley, and only as a front-end RB2. I can't really even use him with much confidence after last week. But, of course, it's Saquon, so you kind of can't sit him unless you're absolutely loaded at the position. Now, on the other side, a month ago, the Philadelphia Eagles looked like they were going to be fighting to be on the clock, in the draft. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're going to be a playoff team. Just like that. They are rolling. They're coming off a big win against New Orleans. They have a very soft schedule to round things out here, where they face the Giants twice, they face the football team twice, and they face the Jets. In all of those games, they don't even have to step foot on a plane, which is a pretty big advantage here from a schedule standpoint. But beyond that, they are able to run the football. We underestimated the presence of Lane Johnson in this offense. Lane Johnson is fantastic. He is opening up lanes for them, and they are running the darn ball. Now, Jordan Howard will not play this week, which does hurt a little bit because, hey, credit where credit's due. Jordan Howard has been good since coming back, essentially, to the active roster. But we do have Miles Sanders, at least. And Miles Sanders, to his credit, looked good last week as well. Now he's in a situation where he is facing a Giants defense that has struggled against the run, and he's largely going to be the only show in town. They'll use a little bit of Boston Scott, don't get me wrong, but this could be a heavy volume in the run game day for Miles Sanders. Of course, the detriment to that, as Derrick Henry has shown us over his career, is if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's probably not going to be the best fantasy option. But I do like his chances on that front. I'm using with confidence as an RB2. Obviously using Jalen Hurts. Obviously still using Dallas Goedert. And Devontae Smith, still a wide receiver, front-end wide receiver 3, borderline wide receiver 2, whatever you want to call him. Let's go to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is obviously running the football well. The Eagles are running the football well. Jalen Hurts is not putting up big-time passing yardage numbers, and we know that. In fact, the line, which is a very low line right now at DraftKings, 196.5, he has not topped that in 4 of his last 5. So give me the under on Jalen Hurts passing yards. I just don't see the need. They're going to run the ball, especially in this matchup where what do you do when you're facing James Bradbury and Adoree Jackson on the outside and you can run the football against that defense? Are you going to continue to challenge those guys, or are you just going to run the darn ball? You're going to run the darn ball. You're going to run the darn ball. Jalen Hurts going to run double-digit carries. You're going to see 18 to 22 carries for Miles Sanders. You're going to run the darn ball. No need to pass here. Give me the under on that one. Atlanta and Jacksonville, get excited. Not really. There's not much to this one. And in fact, there are no lines up right now. It looks like Cordarrelle Patterson is trending towards getting back on the field, but he did get the questionable tag for this one. Of course, you're using Kyle Pitts, you're using James Robinson, the obvious answers to the questions here. I don't know what else I'd really be confident in using if Patterson doesn't play. I mean, I guess in theory, Marvin Jones offers wide receiver 3 potential here in what actually is a good matchup for Trevor Lawrence, but can we have really any confidence here? Can we have much confidence in Dan Arnold after what we saw last week with the fantasy goose egg? No, he's outside of the top 12. I actually have him at tight end 13, so he's pretty close. It's not the most appealing game. So we're going to move on. We'll move on, get excited to an even more appealing game. The Jets and the Texans. Well, hey, even a bad NFL game is a good game. The Lions and Bears game, was it great? No, but it was a good game. It was entertaining. There was, there was some aspects to it that if I was a Lions fan, I'd be pretty ticked off about, that's for sure. But it was still an entertaining game. Anyway, Jets, Houston Texans. Zack Wilson is back. Okay. Does that really impact things overall here for Elijah Moore? No, I don't think so. And Corey Davis, well, it looked like he's very much up in the air. It does look like he's trending towards playing here. If no Corey Davis, we already know Elijah Moore has elite upside. Even with Corey Davis out there, Elijah Moore, a front-end wide receiver 3, with obviously a much higher ceiling. A lot of times when I throw those rankings out there, because I'm at wide receiver 26, people will mistake what that means. I'm not saying I think he finishes as the number 26 wide receiver. I'm saying that's where I think his midpoint is. He could finish, as like the number 1, 2, or 3 wide receiver in any given week. But there is a lot of downside, especially with Zack Wilson back out there. I'll come back to Wilson in a minute. Obviously, we're not using him for fantasy purposes. But this game, I think if you have to use a running back in this game on either side, it is the fantasy football equivalent of pulling your goalie. Like, we are in desperation mode, and we're just doing whatever the heck we can to possibly win this game. It's not very appealing. No Michael Carter, so you're dealing with Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman. Okay, Tevin Coleman should lead in early downs. Ty Johnson would benefit if the Jets play from behind. But heck, it's the Texans. The Jets could kill him. Who knows? It's a volatile situation. Both are desperation flex plays. On the other side, the Jets are the number 1 fantasy matchup for running backs. Yeah, but it's Rex Burkhead and David Johnson. Their combined age is like 70. And I'm not exaggerating. Well, maybe a little bit, but it's over 60. These guys are older backs in an offense where your best running back really is Tyrod Taylor. I know, 18 carries for Rex Burkhead last week, but look at the efficiency. I can't use either one of those guys. If I absolutely had to use one back from this game, it would be Ty Johnson, and I really don't like that. So we're in a bad situation. I do think Tyrod Taylor is fine, though. You want to use him as a streamer option this week. I'm all for that in this matchup. And, of course, we're still starting Brandon Cooks because somebody has to catch the football for him. It's just a bad situation there. For this one, let's go back to the aforementioned Zack Wilson. All right, well, I just talked about how 196.5 was too high for Jalen Hurts. Well, Zack Wilson's is higher. It's 220.5 on FanDuel right now. And I actually think this is a tick too low. It's not that I think Wilson's going to go out and set the world on fire, but it is a favorable matchup, and he has shown upside during the course of the season. 297 passing yards against the Tennessee Titans, which was a favorable matchup as well back in week 4. So in a game where there aren't a ton of appealing lines, I'll play that one. I'm going to play the over on Zack Wilson. It gives me something to root for in that contest. Moving on to one of the games I'm probably looking forward to the most because of the implications. You have basically every team. No, not even basically. You have every team in the AFC West in the hunt for the postseason. And Denver could close the gap with the Chargers here immediately if they beat the Chargers. So this is a really fascinating contest. I love rivalry games more than anything in football, and so we get that in this one as well. And we have a very tough Denver defense. I'm not overthinking it if I have Justin Herbert locked in every week. Obviously, Austin Eckler after his monster game last week. Keenan Allen and even Mike Williams. Mike Williams, a classic example of that high ceiling, low floor back-end wide receiver 2 type where, yes, that's his midpoint, but I don't think that's where he's going to finish. It's either going to be like a top 10 finish or he's going to finish like wide receiver 45, but we got to start him every week. Essentially, if we have him, unless you're totally loaded, you're probably using him every single week. On the other side, Jerry Jeudy's the best option, although I don't love Jerry Jeudy. He's a wide receiver 3. He's the best option of those wideouts. Not by much. I think you could still use Cortland Sutton there. Not using Timmy Patrick, though. He's clearly the number 3 option. Javonte Williams has been so much fun this season. He has truly been, he's been one of the most effective. You can't say he's the most effective when you're comparing especially to Najee Harris, but out of this class, he's been so much fun to watch. He's been so effective. The only problem, he has a major cap on his volume every single week because you have Melvin Gordon there. And Melvin Gordon, while he's on the downslope of his career, is still playing more than well enough to deserve his role in the offense. And if you're Denver, you don't give a darn about fantasy football. You don't even give a darn really about a Javonte Williams true breakout game, whatever that means to them. All you care about is winning these games and getting to the postseason. So you're going to keep doing what you're doing. And while this is a fantastic matchup, the Chargers give up yards in bunches to opposing backfields. I don't think we're going to see a Javonte Williams breakout game. That being said, I have him as a back-end RB2, and I am hammering the over on his rushing yards prop because it's too low. It's 48.5. Now, why do I say it's too low if he has only topped it once in his last 4 games? It's the matchup that I just told you. And this is minus 114 on the over at FanDuel, by the way. Running backs are averaging 4.66 yards per carry against LA. Give me the over. Just give me the over. I'd love the breakout game to happen, but heck, I'll take like 10 carries for 80 yards. How about that, Javonte Williams? That will work for me. The Rams and the Packers. This one has a couple interesting points to it. First and foremost, will Aaron Jones play? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you something I don't know, that's for sure. He is very much up in the air. I would think the Packers would want to save him. But, of course, I am not a head coach in the NFL, and I've learned that I'm not going to try and predict what Matt LaFleur and the Packers do. So there is a very real chance he is back on the field. Now, the downfall to this for fantasy purposes is this is in the 4 o'clock Eastern window. It's the late games, not the early games. So if I have Aaron Jones and I have A.J. Dillon, okay, cool. I will just start A.J. Dillon if Jones doesn't go, and if Jones does go, I'm going to put him in. Because, by the way, if he goes, it's not he's a decoy. No, they don't need him to be. They can just keep him through their bye week, rest him, and then get him back in week 14. They don't need him to be a decoy. If he's out there, he's going. Just like David Montgomery came back before their bye week, a little bit of a surprise. He came back that week. He came back. He got the rock. That's what's going to happen with Aaron Jones. So that's the case. Now, if I have Aaron Jones and I don't have A.J. Dillon, and I don't have another running back in the 4 o'clock window, the Sunday night or the Monday night game, who I can plug in, like an Alex Collins or something like that, I'm not going to roll the dice. I'm just going to play it safe and start whoever's in the 1 o'clock window, 1 o'clock Eastern window. That's what I'm going to do there. On the other side, the question isn't necessarily dealing with injury. And by the way, Aaron Rodgers is going to play. There's no worries there. The question is, how much involvement is Odell Beckham Jr. going to have? And again, I don't quite know. I do know that Sean McVay has talked about it, saying it's a work in progress. I do know they have to get him integrated into the offense. But I do expect him also to be used more than he was this past go-round. I have him as a flex option, so he's outside of the wide receiver 3. He's outside of the top 36, but he is in play if you needed that upside here in this matchup. I'm looking forward to whenever they turn him loose. Now, he will impact Van Jefferson, but Beckham's presence really doesn't impact Cooper Kupp one way or the other. Cooper Kupp is still a stud. We have the 2 elite guys in this matchup, right? Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams. So it's going to be a lot of fun if you like good wide receiver play, or even better than good wide receiver play. So let's go over to speaking of wide receivers, let's go over to the player prop. Marquez Valdes-Scantling coming off a big one. But his line is only 41.5. But I'm still taking the under on that one, a minus 114 at FanDuel. Why? Big misnomer out there, a big confusion in terms of what the Rams are doing in their secondary. I think when you see a matchup like this, historically, here's where the mind goes. Jalen Ramsey shadowing Adams. They're not shadowing this year. That's not the way the Rams have been running things. And part of that is due to Darius Williams, who he did have a stint on injured reserve, but he's been back for the last several weeks here. Darius Williams is playing good football. So you have Darius Williams and Robert Rochelle on the outside. You have Ramsey manning the slot against 3 wide sets, which the Packers do run a lot of 3 wide sets. So Adams doesn't see Jalen Ramsey very often. He will when he's in the slot, but he's not going to see him the whole game, that's for sure. And in fact, the way they line up, you'll actually have Adams seeing more of Rochelle and MVS seeing more of Darius Williams. And that's the matchup I would prefer to not have. So I do think the under is in play. There's a recency bias here. The line feels like it's too low based on what MVS did last week. But if you look at the overall course of the season, this line is a very fair line. It is. But the under is very much in play here. So I'm taking that under. Moving on to Minnesota and San Francisco. Will Elijah Mitchell play? Another situation. And this is very similar to the advice I'll give for, that I gave for Aaron Jones. If you have Jeff Wilson and Elijah Mitchell, you can wait. Because if Mitchell doesn't go, Jeff Wilson's going to touch the ball about 20 times. We know that. If Mitchell does go, Jeff Wilson slides back to, a 10-touch-ish guy who's not going to be usable for fantasy purposes, and you just simply start Mitchell. If you don't have Jeff Wilson, I am more confident in Mitchell playing than I am in Aaron Jones playing. So I would be more willing to roll the dice and wait, even if I don't have that backup or that desperation play. I guess Trey Sermon's likely still out there in some places, so he could be an absolute desperation play. Then I would be waiting on Aaron Jones. The finger, he's been limited in practice, but he has been limited, which is a good sign. Let's go to the remainder of this game. Hey, Kirk Cousins, until he proves us wrong, is rolling. Justin Jefferson has been fantastic. Adam Thielen, all he does is catch touchdowns. Tyler Conklin, if he catches touchdowns, is a good option. Otherwise, he's a 3 for 32 guy. We know what we're doing on the other side as well. Debo, yes. George Kittle, yes. Brandon Ayuk, yes, as a wide receiver 3. And it's about as straightforward as it gets. Obviously, we know Dalvin Cook as well. So Dalvin Cook, let's talk about him. For a guy who puts up the yardage he does, I was a little surprised to see that his rushing yards line is 77.5. He has topped this line in each of his last 5. And I do know, this is a product I'm likely being impacted by the matchup. But I think it's rare to get an opportunity for some of these elite backs to play their rushing yards props unless it's too high and I play an under. It's rare to play an over on these guys. The Dalvin Cooks of the world, the Christian McCaffreys of the world, Derrick Henry when healthy, those type of players. I got an over in on this at -115 on DraftKings. I actually think this line will go up. I don't think it'll go up dramatically, but it wouldn't be surprising if it closed at 80.5. You get 3 extra yards on this line. And sometimes that's all the difference you need for sure. Just that 1 extra yard, 2 extra yards, that makes a huge difference here. Let's wrap it up with the Sunday night game between Cleveland and Baltimore, another AFC North showdown here. No lines for this one. We're wait and see on Marquise Brown. We're wait and see on Nick Chubb. Or not Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, that is. Does seem like Kareem Hunt is going to play. I'm looking at Nick Chubb's name on the screen. I don't care for Nick Chubb if Kareem Hunt plays or not. It's Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb. He's going to see a ton of touches in this one regardless. And we're just going to keep rolling with him. He's fantastic. Kareem Hunt could still be an RB2 option, though, no doubt about it. The passing game is so banged up, I want to avoid it if I can for Cleveland. Now, Lamar being back on the field is obviously very good for the Baltimore Ravens, but is it good for Devontae Freeman? That is the question. If you simply look back to last week, you say, hey, this dude's an RB2+. But I don't think that's wise. Tyler Huntley was under center, A. They played from behind for a good chunk of that game, B. I don't know if we can take anything away from it, C. Latavius Murray back on the field. Devonta Freeman and Murray in this backfield. What happens if they're playing from a winning game script? Do you have more of the guy who would figure to be the passing down back in Freeman or more of the guy who would figure to be the early down back in Murray? I think it's Murray, obviously, but I'm not using him until I'm verifying that question. So here's what I did for rankings purposes. I'm not going to be that stubborn. I am ranking Freeman as a flex option, and we're wait and see with Murray. It would not surprise me at all if we come back next week and we say, well, back to the drawing board. But also very well within the realm of possibility is that, yes, this is just Freeman's backfield now, and Murray's there as well, but Freeman's the guy. So we shall see. I'm starting Freeman as a flex. I'm not going to fade him. but that's all I'm doing. I'm tempering expectations. Of course, Mark Andrews is awesome, and you already know that. If Marquise Brown plays, he's a wide receiver 2, and Rashad Bateman moves back to the edge of wide receiver 3 territory. If Brown does not play, Rashad Bateman sneaks into the back end of the wide receiver 2s. All right, that's everything for the matchups. Remember, Black Friday, use this before you lose it. 40% off at ftnbets.com, ftndaily.com, ftnfantasy.com. Such a great deal, man. Such a great deal. You're not going to see 40% off. We're like a 10 to 20% off. And I think 20% off is pretty darn good. 40% off, man, you're almost getting half off of this thing. It's silly not to do it, and it certainly FTN bets. Just follow what Chris Meany does, and it pays for the subscription in like a day anyway. But go check that out. Of course, remember, I will be back on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern for the Monday Night Football Bets show. We'll break down 5 player props for you. I'll also talk about the lines for the game, the spread, the over-under, what I think about those as well, if there's anything in play. Also, don't forget, you can follow along with me on Twitter at Jeff Ratcliffe. Of course, follow our handles at FTN Network, FTN Fantasy, FTN Daily, and FTNBets.com. You get a little something different from each one of those handles, so make sure you're following all 4 of them. All right, enjoy the football week 12, baby. Enjoy the football this weekend. I will catch you on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm Jeff Ratcliffe, and I'm out.